Welcome to the Functional Nurse Podcast, where we explore how nurses are transforming healthcare through functional medicine and nurse-led innovation. I'm your host, Bridget Sager, founder of the Institute for Functional Nursing. Here, we're reclaiming our role as healers and leaders, one root cause conversation at a time. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Functional Nurse Podcast. I am excited to talk about this topic with you today. As you may know, we have moved the Holistic Nursing Entrepreneur Program over to the Institute for Functional Nursing. And so a lot of nurses are now enrolling in that program to work through it at their own pace while they're in the full functional nursing program. But I also have students that had signed up for it previously before we moved it to IFN. We had all the founding nurses. Now we're all in one new home and we are having monthly meetings. We're able to meet live and talk about what they're working on in their practice and what might be working well for them, what they're struggling with. It is a really exciting event for me every month to be able to hear what they have been kind of being brave enough to try for the first time often. That is one of the realities of being a nurse entrepreneur is that you have to learn some new things. On that vein, I decided to do an episode where I share 10 truths that I think every aspiring nurse entrepreneur should know. And by nurse entrepreneur, I mean nurses and nurse practitioners. I am framing this as holistic nurses or functional nurses. I definitely don't pretend to be an expert in like a conventional healthcare type, like big corporate settings with lots of procedures and things. That's not my area of expertise. But I think for the holistic nurse or functional nurse or nurse practitioner, there are a lot of things that are very common for the majority of us. And I have had a few students, and some of my past guests on the podcast are entrepreneurs who have a background in something that has enhanced their practice in some way, or they almost seem oblivious to the things that the rest of us are challenged with, but that is the unicorn. The majority of us have really similar things that emerge when we step into being an entrepreneur. For me, I had no thoughts of ever being an entrepreneur in my whole life. And after I had my first son and I was home with him, I tried to make a website. And this was a really long time ago. This was 2005, I think. I tried to make a website and sell like organic baby clothes and cloth diapers. Didn't get very far into that. It was more like there was no Wix or Squarespace back then. It was like writing code and things that are just not for me. But I remember a boss I had before then, like well before then, had said to me, if you ever don't know what you want to do in life, get a master's in business because when you figure it out, you'll know how to make a lot of money doing it. Whatever you love in life, then you'll be ready to just like blow the lid off of it. I never forgot that, but it was never the thing that came to the front for me in life. But I did tell my sons that if you don't know what you want to do yet, that's okay. You could always get a business degree and either that be your thing, maybe, but like at least it'll set you up to be ready. And so now it's kind of funny because my younger son wants to be a recording engineer. We love music. And so I'm really excited for him. He's getting a bachelor's in business while I'm doing my master's in business right now. We're in some of the same classes at different levels. Oh, that's kind of fun. I I like the more that I learned about holistic nursing, functional nursing, and like I was learning nurse coaching. That was the first time since becoming a nurse that I thought about having my own business. To kind of circle back to where I started with that rant. I realized like that I wasn't going to be able to really do what I was learning in the setting I was in. At the time, the corporation, the third corporation that had bought our little hospital system and clinics was putting even more time constraints on my practice. It just was becoming very clear that the only way that I could practice it was to have my own practice. I had several friends that were kind of in that same boat that like we'd been learning along the same vein and we would come together and find we'd struggled with the same issues and how to set up a business type themes. And I think it's interesting, as I've said before, that nobody really proposes in nursing school that maybe we could do this on our own or that we could help people in a different way. That doesn't really come up very much. I might have said this on a recent episode, I don't remember, but I went to my son's friend's pinning ceremony recently, and it was the same school I got my associate degree in nursing at. So that was kind of fun. And I'm friends with the dean and some of the faculty at that school. And so we were talking afterwards about that idea, like, and I offered, I was like, "I would love to come in and just, like, share that idea with nursing students that it doesn't have to be the hospital, long-term care." In my area, most of the time it's been you're not going straight into a clinic with some 9 to 5 job, right? You're gonna work night shift in the hospital, you're gonna get a job at a long-term care facility. I think it's an interesting idea, like, and I ask my students a lot, I'm like, "Do you really think that massage therapists, when they're in school, aren't talking about if they're gonna have their own practice?" Like, most massage therapists end up with their own practice. So, it's not like there's a lot of healthcare and, like, human care type practices that, like, it's kind of on the table, right? Like, physicians decide if they're gonna open their own clinic or not, chiropractors, naturopaths, a lot of different types of healthcare practitioners definitely talk about having their own practice when they're in school or it's on the table. They know that it's a possibility. I think it's interesting that as nurses, it doesn't come up for us in school. It doesn't even cross our minds in our practice generally. I know I've said this before. I've had tons of nurses ask me if nurses are even allowed to own a business. And I just think that's bananas now. Maybe I didn't think that was a weird question when I first thought of it. Maybe I don't remember my mindset, but it shifted a lot. So that being said, if you don't already know this, I learned a lot from my experience setting up my practice. I've learned a lot from the nurses that I've supported and the nurse practitioners in all of this space over the years. And that's how we created the holistic nursing entrepreneur program is I got a couple dozen founding nurses and nurse practitioners. We had a lot of meetings. We did a lot of brainstorming and talking about what's working and what's not, what we would recommend, what we would do differently. Then I fold in what I'm learning in my business program. It's been really fulfilling. It's been so great to connect with all of them and build the program. And now that it is in existence, to be able to meet monthly and talk about everybody's progress. The point of this episode really is to kind of talk through uh, 10 things that came to mind for me when I was thinking about what I find to be things that you should be okay with or maybe know before you get started. The first one is a hard lesson, and it's different for each of us where we land with this one, but it's a unique problem, I think, for nurses too, in many ways. I talk a lot about how nurse can cut down from a full time FTE and work maybe a point 0.6 a couple days a week. And they'll still have benefits. Maybe they have health insurance, life insurance, everything they need to care for their families and themselves. And they could set up a practice part time. So we're really unique in that way. There's not a lot of professions that could do that. The only exception there being if you have a non compete, which is not normally an RN problem. That's usually an NP problem. But outside of that, most businesses start by creating a business plan, going to a bank or some sort of financer, getting a loan, getting startup money, and then going from there. That is not the case for nurse entrepreneurs. I have not met any holistic nurse entrepreneurs that are like, oh, yeah, I went out and got a startup loan to cover all my costs. That's just not how it's done. When that's the case, you have two choices. You are either going to put your time or your money into each thing that your business needs. I think that for me, if you don't take anything else away from this, is that it's the truth. We are really lucky that we can do what I said, like work part time and have benefits and build our business. We're really lucky that, in particular, a telehealth practice or like renting space. I have a lot of students that have set up a practice in a wellness space, somewhere where other providers are using those rooms too as they grow. We're really lucky how low our overhead is to start a practice. You can start a practice as a holistic nurse or nurse practitioner for very little money compared to almost every other kind of business that I can think of. But everything that you need to do to grow your business is either going to take your time or your money. You have to decide which. The example that I'll use first is your website. People need to know how to learn more about you and what you offer. Your website is the place for that to take place. And I will tell you that it is one of the things that my students procrastinate the most. They think it's going to be the hardest. Walk them through different ways that they can do that and programs they can use. Try to empower them as much as possible to build a website. By the time they get to that point in the program, they're set up for success. It is a hurdle that I think a lot of nurses have to overcome. If they're going to have to do it, right? Well, that's not true because you can hire somebody too. And actually, on a side note, I think it's kind of funny. I have been managing my own websites for a long time, and I've created several. And I'm not claiming that they're the best ever. And if you've seen my websites, they're fine. They're not amazing. But I recently decided that I was going to hire somebody to move landing pages and optimize everything. And it ended up being so much less than I thought it was gonna be because I've heard so many bad stories from nurses. So, if you're in the entrepreneur program, ask me about it at the next meeting because 'cause I'll tell you where to go and what to use. Yeah, way easier than I thought. I'm really happy about that. I'm not gonna self-do a website anymore, but I'm glad I can go in and update it when I need to. The website example being, you're either gonna pay somebody to do it. Maybe not as much as I've heard in the past, but you're gonna pay somebody to do it, or you're gonna figure out how to do it on your own. I promise you it's not that hard. I've done it. It's not that bad, but it's procrastinated regularly by my students. It is a thing. Some of the other things that you might do, you're either going to spend your time doing it or you're going to hire somebody to do it, is your social media, creating content. If you're going to create like courses or presentations and you need slides, you can either learn how to do that yourself or hire somebody, or just do the math on how much your time's worth and decide if it's worth your time. It depends on what kind of business you're gonna have as to what that looks like. Sometimes I'll have students, for example, that are like, "Yeah, I could create these documents myself. I wanna have handouts, or I wanna have an intake form built into my electronic health record," whatever that might be, and they're like, "I'm gonna pay for this template because I wanna start seeing people and bringing in revenue." That makes sense. I tell my students a lot, if it's a thing that's keeping you from getting started and you would otherwise have clients tomorrow, you have a wait list, and I teach them how to build a wait list, right? So then if you have a wait list of people that are waiting for you, and then you have one thing that you don't want to do and then you could get started, please pay somebody to do that so that you can get started, because that doesn't make sense. So the last thing when we're talking about money that is going to come up a little bit further too is spending money on marketing. And I'm telling you, like, owning your own business in any other area, if you ask people you know who own a business, if you tell them what it's like to do it as a nurse, I bet their jaw's going to drop. The overhead and startup costs for almost every other business are just so much higher. But what I find nurses unwilling to do is spend any money on their marketing. Yeah, we're going to talk more about marketing today. It would be great if all we had to do is create our business, put it on Google as a business listing, and people just start scheduling and they want to work with us just because our messaging is perfect. That's not the reality. We need to get in front of the people that we want to help. When I say time and money, I also mean I think a lot of nurses, and sometimes I have to figure out how to bring things up when I meet with my students. How do I say this? You have to spend money on marketing. There are organic posts on social media where you're just getting in front of your audience, a normal post, but paid ads drive business. And so those can be necessary. And I find that to be something that a lot of nurses aren't willing to do, or everything isn't set up yet. So they aren't taking that step. So, time and money, and deciding which of those you're willing to do for each aspect of your business. My students work through 15 modules and they're all on different topics. We have 3 marketing modules. So, in each of those modules, they're learning a different aspect of their business, considering where they stand now, where they want to be. And maybe it's something that's really easy for them to do, or they have a past skill that folds in and makes it easier for them than the rest of us. Lucky them, right? I have a student that's really good at like code stuff. That's a skill that I do not want, honestly. There are trade-offs to be made and there's not a right answer, or like everybody should do it the same way. But you're either going to pay people to do stuff or you're going to learn some new skills. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, if you build it, they're going to find you. I started to touch on this a minute ago. A lot of nurses are like, well, I made it, but I don't have any clients. And that's why we have 3 marketing modules, because it's complicated. That might be the thing that needs the most work in a business, is how do you get in front of the right audience? I use IFN, and having built it as my example, I can create a place for people to learn functional nursing, but like, how do people know that we exist and like find us? And how do you show up when people are searching for a solution to their problem? When we apply this to, let's say you're a gut health nurse, how are you supposed to show up for people to know that you're available and offering the type of care they're looking for. That is an art, and it is a skill that you develop over time too, and it isn't one thing that you do. It is definitely not being on social media all day long. I think that that whole idea of, like, I open my practice and it isn't filling, and I see that all the time in, like, functional medicine groups I'm in, is like, how do you get clients? And it's like you putting up a sign in your community that you offer something. I mean, maybe if it's in a really visible place, we'll get you some traffic, but essentially, you have to make sure the right people know that you exist. And depending on what type of practice it is, there's different approaches to what you want to put more of your energy into. But it isn't what I think a lot of nurses think it is posting a whole bunch of stuff on social media all day long. You could spend all day long on that every day and get really caught up in it. I don't recommend it. If you build it, they will come is not true. So that is a hard truth that there is more to be done to get in front of your audience. The really great thing about that is when you get really good at one thing and you're known for it, everybody knows who to send people to. So once you get this established, your practice can really thrive. One other one is that I kind of brought up at the beginning. You don't know enough yet, but that's just the truth. And it's kind of interesting now to have seen this happen to so many students is they'll start the entrepreneur program and then be like, "Oh, I didn't even think of that." And now a quick word about our sponsor, the Institute for Functional Nursing. IFN is the leading education and community platform for nurses bringing functional medicine into their practice. IFN offers everything from short, on-demand contact hour courses to the full functional nursing program designed specifically for nurses and nurse practitioners ready to practice root cause, whole person care. If you're looking for connection and real-time learning, the Functional Nursing membership includes 4 live meetings every month where we cover case studies and have open discussions and connection. Come be a part of a movement that's redefining what it means to be a nurse. Visit fxnursing.com to learn more and join us. And now back to today's episode. Yeah, there are a lot of things that come up for a business that there's no one place other than the program now. There's not one place where, like, there's just a checklist of everything you need to do for a holistic nursing business, because even if there's checklists for, like, a business in general, this is stuff you need to do for a business, get a business license and, like, figure out if you have to pay sales tax and things like that. I think everybody knows they have to do those things if they're starting a business. But if you're starting a business, there are a lot of things that you have to consider. And there are things that because you're a nurse or a healthcare practitioner, you have to consider. And the great thing is that that's not a big deal, because I think that we might be the most resourceful profession. That's arguable, I'm sure, but we're very resourceful. We're extremely good at learning new skills. It's kind of a job requirement. And so I find that my students are really good at just kind of getting comfortable with the fact that, okay, I have to learn this new skill, implement that. Okay, now that's easy. I know how to do that next time. I need to do that annually. I'm going to set a reminder. Then, gosh, now I got to do the website. Okay, how do I do that? Or who do I want to do that for me? That it's layers. And I try to help them approach it in a way that is taking care of the things that you need to start business. And then there are things that you set yourself up for. I encourage them, take on a first client and challenge yourself to create an intake form before that, before the email sequence to send that to them. And then challenge yourself to figure out the payment system and how to send a receipt to them afterwards and after visit summary. And once those things are built and you've worked through them for a client, now it's there. If it went well, reuse or modify and use next time. I also encourage new nurse practitioners and nurses that are entrepreneurs to be honest with the first clients. We're not new nurses and nurse practitioners. We're not new. We might be new to this electronic health record or this payment system. I think it's fine to say that. Say, "Hey, I would love to work with you. I'm using this new system and I would love to offer you 25% off this first visit if you'd be willing to give me some feedback on any glitches or anything that doesn't seem to flow well or that I could add." Being honest like that, people really want to support small businesses, and then they can feel like they're helping you get started. Okay, so that ties into the next one, which is number 4, is you're gonna learn skills that you never saw coming. And I would say it's almost like a wicked laugh. I talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs, and like I have a lot of meetings with experts in the different areas of the functional world, including lab companies and just different things. And it's funny how many business owners I've talked to, and like we kind of laugh at just how ridiculous it is, the number of like tech platforms we have to learn how to use and subscribe to and upgrade and connect to each other. It's ridiculous. It's true. As I said, it's gradual. I'm gonna go ahead and say that if you do not want to learn any tech, I don't think that you should do this. Do not start your own practice, because I don't know how you could, at this point, if you don't want to learn how to like set up an electronic health record and learn how to accept payments and be HIPAA compliant. If you take a program like mine, we all support each other with that and I teach it. If you're like, I'm just going to start my practice and see how it goes, and you don't want to learn how to use technology, you're not willing to open 5 YouTube tabs and watch videos and copy yourself on another tab, I think it would be extremely challenging, because that is a reality. I used to be the super user. I would do that for my Epic electronic health record at the hospital and the clinic when I was in corporate healthcare, because I wanted to learn those skills and get better at them and know all the things that would make it where I could be faster and spend more time caring for people. I don't think that I'm a super techie person by definition. I definitely, my sons would be laughing if they heard me talking about this right now, but this is kind of funny. I went to like a spa thing a couple months ago, and this girl was much younger than me, and the tablet was glitching on the music, and she said, "Oh my god, I'm so much younger than you. You'd think I'd know how to work tech." I didn't know her. I hope you guys are laughing, because that was ridiculous. Because if she saw my desk, it's like I have like arms and wires and screens and stuff everywhere. I have tons of tabs open with different software I have to learn how to use, and that's the reality of being an entrepreneur, is particularly if you're going to do a virtual practice. But even if you're doing it in person, you still need to be able to have people schedule and pay and chart and communicate with them between visits. You're going to have to pay taxes and fill out forms and file electronic things. It's just the reality. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling about that. It's just true. It gets easier. Okay, number 5, you're gonna care a lot. And I would say a lot of my students, I think, get kind of preoccupied with it. Not everybody, though. Some people are like, "Oh, I put it on the back burner. I'll get to it later. I haven't done anything in a couple months." I don't think it's everybody, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs in general, it's like having another baby or having it instead of a baby. Like business is like another child, and you grow to care about it a lot and think about it all the time and want the best for it and try to nurture it. And so I think that one I don't need to like ramble about, but uh, I think it's definitely worth it for me. I get bored really easily, so I think it's really fun to have new challenges and things to learn all the time. It's perfect for me. Okay, so number 6 is you're gonna cry sometimes, but like I think, it can be frustrating. One of my classes for my MBA, we had to use Excel, and I had learned Google Sheets and was pretty good at it to do my doctorate work. I tried to learn that better. But then I don't know what it is, I'm not a Microsoft person. I could not get Excel to work well, and that was like a crying moment for me last year, just trying to, like, do that over and over again, and that coulda easily been just as much for my business as it was for the class. So, there's an example of, like, you could have a tech thing that just will not work, and you have to learn something new or figure it out or know who to ask. But it's not just bad stuff, things are frustrating, but I think there are times where I feel really proud or so fulfilled, and I could cry about that, like how talking to all the faculty and getting everybody on board to help build IFN, I could have cried, lots of goosebumps. Is like finding other nurse practitioners and nurses that were aligned with like where I was at and not feeling alone as an educator. There are a lot of examples that I could give you, and just connecting with students and having them come in and talk about big things that have happened in their practice. Those kind of things for me, you could cry about that too. I get really sweet feedback and I love that. Number 7, this is a little bit more advice, but this one I'm going to say stop watching your competitors. I have a lot of nurses, and I guess that's kind of directive. It's not a truth, but I guess it's a truth. Is a lot of nurses will tell me, I looked at this other person and they're doing something really similar to me or what I was thinking about doing. Maybe I'm not going to do it. Recently in the entrepreneur program, we had that conversation with somebody. It ended up being, oh, maybe they'll partner and they could have a collaborative approach. I hadn't even thought of that. I thought that was a really great suggestion. I think a lot of my students in the past, when we explore what they might want to do with their practice, maybe a niche, they get a little bit hung up on what other people in their community are offering, and imposter syndrome creeps in. They're like, well, they had this training or this other thing that I don't offer. I would say don't worry about what other people are doing. Which leads me to number 8 is that there's room for more than one functional or holistic nurse in your community. This comes up a lot. An example that I use, I know I talk about massage therapists a lot, but if you think about it, there are several massage therapists in my community, and I don't live in a big town. And I might like one, and my friend might like a different one. Everybody that goes to that person might have a completely different opinion of them and what they like about what they do as a massage therapist. I don't know how many nurses I've had say, "Well, I was gonna do it, but it turns out there's already somebody doing it in my town." There's room for more than one of you. I mean, look at our healthcare system and people's outcomes. They need us. They need more people like us. Don't let that stop you. You can offer a different niche if you want to, or even if you're in the same niche. I've talked to students about exploring the approach that that person has. Are they doing one-on-one visits and you're really into groups, or they only do one-on-one cash pay per visit and you offer a bundle. And so there are a lot of different ways to structure your practice that set you apart. I don't know how many of you've gone to get a new primary care provider or a new massage therapist or whatever. Everybody else thinks they're great and their reviews are great. And you go and you're just like, I'm not feeling it. Somebody could be really good at their job and they're just not the connection for you. And realize that that's the case for your potential clients too. They might prefer that other person, and that's fine because there's room for both of you to grow your business. I say think about what niches are available that you're into. A lot of my students, I'm like, you got to get a niche. You got to pick something that people know who you are and what you offer and how you help people. And when I try to explore that with them, if they're, like, hung up on it, then I'll say, "Well, what do you envision offering?" And they'll pretty much name off, like, 4 things, and it's just not specific enough. So, often, even if you did feel like there's somebody else in your community, pick one of your other things that you're really into if you think that that's gonna keep you from being able to be successful. But you do have to get specific if you wanna fill your practice. So, I would say not getting specific is a much bigger threat to your success than being in the same town as somebody else doing something similar. Okay, so that's number 7 or number 8, sorry. Okay, so number 9 is you're not gonna be everyone's nurse. That similar to the last 2 topics, but a little bit different is not somebody might prefer somebody else over you, but also you can't be everybody's nurse. And if you try to reach everybody and you try to care for everybody, nobody's going to know who you serve. This is a huge take home message from this episode. If you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or you are and it's not going well, your practice isn't filling up, I think, and I'm guilty of this too when I first started my practice, if you're worried that getting specific is not going to get you enough people, and so you're like, I'm going to say I help everybody so that I can fill my practice, you're not going to fill your practice. It's highly unlikely that you're going to fill your practice. I mean, maybe you will. I can't think of anybody that has, but it's not impossible, especially if you want to do paid ads. Like I said, you can get in front of people, but you still have to convince people that you solve the problem that they have. And how are you going to do that if I know this isn't popular for me to say, but I've been saying it and I'm sorry, is like wellness is not going to get you anywhere. The only exception being like a wellness center, like I said before. If there's a wellness center, I think people understand what that means. They know it's going to be a couple different kind of practitioners and that there'll be a holistic approach. Maybe it's a massage therapist, a chiropractor, a functional nurse, a dietitian, things like that. I think in that case, wellness center makes sense. But if you are offering a 6-month package for functional nurse coaching and you're charging a high dollar mark for that, which you should, and you're trying to convince people to sign up and work with you, and they need to be motivated and ready and committed, and they need to sign on the dotted line and start working with you, how are they going to know that they should, or that you're the right fit, or that you solve the problem that they have if you say that you're a wellness center and they're struggling with like an autoimmune disease and anxiety and they haven't slept in months? They're not going to know that you help them. And so when you get really specific and you say who you help and how you help them, and in particular, I teach nurses how to be sure they're getting testimonials and put them in the right place to be seen and for people to understand all that. People need to know that you solve the problem that they have and believe you and build trust in you to be willing to give you their money and work with you. That takes time and it takes marketing and networking to do. Accepting the fact that trying to reach everybody is probably going to keep you from reaching essentially anybody, and that when you get way more narrow, it's better. And that even when you get really narrow, you could probably get even more narrow than you think. And our last meeting was a couple months ago where we talked about, it was our meetup for the month for the entrepreneur program. And we were talking about getting really, really narrow. And then even once we did for somebody, like help them get there, then we thought of like 5 different ways to do that. You wouldn't believe it. You really got to kind of think it through and explore that for yourself and your practice, what that means for you. Okay, so the last one is a little bit more broad. It's just like the system isn't set up for this. We have to kind of just do it. And that's where HNEP came from, is because my students were leaving my previous course I used to teach that was shorter. And they were like, well, I want a business program. I want to learn how to do this on my own. Or I can't keep working in conventional healthcare. I got to leave. I'm going to start my own practice. And I didn't have any like program to offer them. Then they started coming back like to my other courses, and we'd be in meetings and they'd be like, "Oh, I tried that. That did not help. That was a waste of money." They're telling me they're spending like $15,000-$20,000 on business programs and falling flat and making $0 and having no clients and still really confused, or it wasn't specific to nursing, or it was, but they gave them really bad advice. I don't think that the world, and in particular corporate and allopathic healthcare, is set up for us to be able to practice the way that most of us feel really great about. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer at all with the things that I shared. They're just realities that I wouldn't want you to get 6 months into. You've cut your hours at work. You're 6 months into this business and you're like, I haven't started making my website yet. And I have found a way to procrastinate it every day. Just kind of think through, I guess, these topics. Maybe like you're like, oh, I already knew all that and I'm still ready. Like, then go for it. Because I personally feel like there's nothing more fulfilling. I realize now not everybody is like an entrepreneurial spirit, or they try it and this was not for me. But for a lot of people that have, I think, a lot of the similar characteristics I talked about in here, if you like love learning, you like taking on new challenges, you like challenging yourself to try new things, and you really want to offer something different to your community, I think it can be really amazing. And so I love seeing nurses step into this. I'm excited to see more and more nurses step into this. We have several students that are joining the full program, as I mentioned, and then the entrepreneur program on the side. And I imagine that's going to shift to even more as new people to functional nursing work through the program and the light bulbs go off for them. This could be really cool to offer in my own setting. So anyway, I'm really glad to be able to share this with you, and I'm glad that you are here to hear it. And until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to the Functional Nurse Podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps other nurses find this movement. To learn more about our programs and join the community at IFN, visit fxnursing.com. Together, we're not just rethinking healthcare, we are rebuilding it from the inside out.